chairman of NASI, I came into close contact with government, and all I could say is it's been so good. We've been welcomed as a group, as an association by the state government. What we observed before I became the state chairman, I was actually the national treasurer of the association, and we had gone around the country, and if there will be a peer review mechanism, just comparing the state with other states, not trying to downplay what other states are doing, but I want to believe Ogun State comes first. And like I said, so far, so very good. We were welcomed with open arms, and I have to give you 3 instances of what happened that made me realize that, yeah, this is a state to be. There was a time the Commissioner for Commerce and Industry summoned all members of the organized private sector, the BMOs, that's ourselves, Ogusima, NASME, to come to the office, telling us that there was a particular petition written by an SME in one of the local governments, claiming that people were disturbing them for taxes that were not meant to be paid by them. And the governor got livid, minuted to the petition, and told the state Commissioner for Commerce and Industry to look into it. The local government chairman, the chairman of that particular local government was summoned, and the issue was trashed out. And for me, one of the biggest problems SMEs have nationwide is the issue of multiple taxation. People just come, try one way or the other to. I set up business in Shagamu. The only time we had that problem, I threatened, maybe because I am the chairman of NASI in Ogun State, and the man just knew that he would be in trouble if he doesn't walk out of the office. So far, so good for SMEs in Ogun State. One thing again we've noticed is the influx of SMEs into the state. Before now, maybe 5, 6, 8 years ago, rent was as low as 80,000 for a bedroom, 2-bedroom flat. Right now, you can get rent for anything less than 250, 300,000 for a bedroom or 2-bedroom flat. That shows, because I wouldn't have the data to prove the number of people that have actually moved into Ogun State by virtue of the development they've noticed in the state. Then again, we had an SME conference that the state government was party to, and SMEs came from far and near. We could sense that so many SMEs even came from Lagos State and some other neighboring states, asking how they could come into the state to set up businesses here. In NASI, we have adopted a 3-pronged focus, that is people, processes, and products. For us, in that order, for us, the people are extremely important. They are more important than the process, they are more important than the product. And we have we engaged some strategies, the strategy of exposure, reorientation, the strategy of training, then lastly, motivation, in that order. And we could key into the government's focus on human capital development for people of Ogun State. That's why we had to adopt those strategies and focus. And again, it's been so good because we've had series of support from the state government encouraging us in so many things that we're doing, maybe because it could be aligned with the objectives and the focus of the state government. I wouldn't, why do we focus on people and processes? Ogun State is active in the extractive industry, mines, solid minerals, and agriculture. And again, by virtue of its nearness to cities like Lagos, Ibadan, there's every tendency that there's going to be a sort of influx of people from those those areas, to become uptakers in those extractive industry, to become processors. I led a delegation of the association to California just in March, and we came to realize there was a very high demand for products in Nigeria. Let me say this while rounding up. Somebody ran to meet us to ask us, he said, look, you people have tiger nuts. I didn't know what tiger nuts was until I Googled it right in front of the person, and I found out that it was a particular nut that we eat in abundance in Nigeria. And the guy told us that, look, if you can get us a shipload of tiger nuts, we're ready to buy. But along the line, we came across another person that actually does his business, an American that does his business in Republic of Benin. And then he told us the challenges in doing business in Nigeria. He told us that the issue is actually the way we process that. Yes, quite well, our products are one of the best in the world. Our ginger, our palm produce, ginger nuts and what have you. But the problem is the processing, and that if we could get the processing right, and that a lot of American business deal in fair trade, that means anywhere they are operating, they want to see the benefit accruing to the community that they are operating from, that it will be very easy for American businesses to come into Nigeria. And for us, we decided that for our members to become actual uptakers in the extractive industries, that's processors, before they are now shipped abroad for a more lucrative international market, we need to come back home. We need to refocus on our people. And in refocusing on our people, those are the micro, small, medium enterprise operators. We have engaged with the government. We've told the government all what we need to do, and the government is giving us all necessary support, which is second to none. Like I told you, I've been around the country as the national treasurer of the association, and what we are seeing in Ogun State is really second to none. And we can't just do anything but to thank God that we're in the state. We're in a state like this, from 35 to number 5 in the index of doing business in Nigeria. That is quite commendable. Ogun State is a virgin land. It's a virgin land for doing good business and for making good returns on investment.
Yes,
and,
if I'm trying to engage, and this is a question is really thrown out of the floor, and anybody can deal with it, and it's really latching on to one of the things you said. What can you do? I'll call you all you majors. What can you do in trying to hook yourself back to the value chain, and therefore SMEs and all the other small organizations, the youths? There's a lot of talk about and excitement about getting the youth involved, because it's their life, it's their generation that's coming on. What can you do to ensure that you plug in? You look at the quality of life in the state, it's how many people are employed, and are we employing the people that have got the energy, the innovation, and so on, to get things going? So this is for any one of you. What can you do? What are you doing? What should we do to get that engagement? Yes, John. Yeah.
Briefly, if we were to build a 100,000-ton starch plant, we will need 400,000 tons of tubers. We will need about 40,000 farmers to do that.
Did you say 400,000?
Yes, 40,000 farmers.
40,000.
So in order to shift our supply chain inward, that's a great logistical task. And here the state does play a wonderful role, because there's no one better than the state to help organize the farmers associations, to set the guidelines of interaction, facilitate this organization of 40,000 people in the supply chain. So I think the state has as the supply chain shifts inward, the state has a great role to play in helping organize the farmers into collectives and arrange the interactions between the industries that are going to take their product and support them to grow.
For that type of initiative, do you work with government? Or it's something that you just do on your own?
We work with the state government, who in turn works with the Farmers Association, to set up that interaction. And one other thing I would suggest for the states is that having a piece of land and holding it, and it does nothing, is not a good thing. It's better to give the land if that land is going to produce something very productive and is going to provide 100,000 jobs around. So I think the state also plays a great role in how land is allocated, and it's better to have a land that is productive than a land that's not used and is held for the future.
Yeah.
Because so I think the state has a great role to play. It plays a great role in activating the supply chain, the farmers association, as well as coordinating the use of land.
Yeah, they say the best thing for any farmer is to have literally an off-take agreement whereby you know everything you produce is got its destination. You were going to say something?
Yes, I would latch a little bit onto what he said, which is to say, if we design the business model itself to be inclusive, and we look at growth from that point of view, about how can growth from the get-go be inclusive, then the fundamental role of the private sector is really to develop growth and to develop markets by understanding and serving the people in the markets in which it plays. We should be wary of thinking about that we do business and then when we finish we think about how we contribute to society. I think the responsibility that we have is to define our business models in such a way that as we are actually doing business, the everyday business, we are improving the communities and improving the lives. I'll give you two examples from my own experience. We of course deal in billion cubes. We have the brand called Knorr. Seeing that anemia is a big issue in Nigeria, we enriched our billion cubes with iron so that the daily consumption of billion cubes actually addresses some of the anemia problem. We don't do finish selling billion cubes and we say what can we contribute to anemia. Another example that I can give is our campaign on teaching people the right way to brush your teeth and when you brush your teeth. By doing that, you improve the oral health of the people of Nigeria and the people of Ogun State because 75% of our manufacturing base is here. But also, if people brush their teeth in the right way, they have healthier lives, they consume much more as a result of the fact that they are more productive, and business therefore prospers. So when we talk about competitiveness, we should try to get away from the dichotomy of the private sector sitting somewhere, government sitting somewhere, and when the private sector finishes what it is doing, it contributes something which is the page 13 of its annual report to a much more holistic and integrated model where the very act of doing business is developing the value chains, developing communities, developing the farming and agricultural system. And I think that uniquely, that's where Ogun State is most differentiated, that this process is understood. Never have I met the governor and his team and had to spend a lot of time trying to explain why business is relevant for development. And that is the thing that Ogun State, in my view, has developed and almost become a thought leader in the context of Nigeria, that it must continue to embrace, that it sees the development effort as very integrated, it understands the role of the various sectors. We as the private sector also know we can never be government. That's why we're called a sector, not the entire society. So we play within an ecosystem and all of us come together to build a competitive ecosystem. What we could do as a private sector coming from a global context is that we also, and Ogun State does that, I know when they speak about the Ogun standard, I know definitely the governor is not happy to be number 5 only within the context of Nigeria. There's absolutely no reason why Ogun State must not embrace world-class standards in what it does. There's absolutely no reason. It is a state that legitimately can have the ambition to play at world-class standards in certain selected sectors, and that's what it must do. When I was here 2 weeks ago, I was much earlier for my appointment than I had been given 9 o'clock, not knowing what the traffic was. I came much earlier. So I decided to tour Ogun State, ended up in parts of Abeokuta that I had never been to. And what struck me is that if you look at the development model and the trajectory that it is going at, very much global values are being embraced. And that's how it must look at itself. So don't be too happy if you become the number 4 in Nigeria. The question I will ask is, why can Ogun State not become the model state in in West Africa, and then in Africa and globally. That Ogun State has the potential, and that's the way it must be.
Thank you very much. As we wrap up, and I'll start with you, and we'll wrap up as well. What I just want us to do is, whilst we give all these well-deserved accolades, the question I want to ask is, what more can be done? What more should be done? So that at least we know it's not a perfect situation, but certainly we're nearly there, and your own advice to the government of Ogun State in terms of the few more steps that we must take whilst you answer the question. Thank you. Now I'll start with Peju, and then I'll go to the end, and then we'll walk our way down here. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. A lot has been said about what makes Ogun State a very conducive environment. I think the theme of this conference is also taking us in the right direction. I want to start with the issue of the environment. And we said, how can we ensure that the wealth creation and wealth generation in the state is inclusive? There are many initiatives, such as, for example, the various waste to wealth initiatives. Cement plants are by nature huge consumers of energy. And we said that Ogun State is a natural confluence of both the agricultural industry and industries and contributing to industrialization. Biomass, in other words, agricultural residues which are normally wasted and thrown away, can be collected by these smallholders and used to feed other industries for energy and ultimately for power. The same thing with municipal waste. The same thing with industrial waste. So I think one thing the government can do is put regulations in place to enable the collection of these various waste streams, and we can actually use that to empower and enrich the state. So the first is looking at how we can generate more wealth from waste to energy. The second I would say is in terms of tourism. Many of you may not know this, but Lafarge has 2 excellent golf courses in Eweko and Shagamu, and people come from all over the country to play golf at these golf courses. We can continue to develop the hospitality industry, given that Ogun State is so close to Lagos State and Ibadan. And in fact, many people from those states come to Ogun State at the weekends. So I think the area of tourism is another big area in which we can continue to see improvement. The third, of course, which has been mentioned, is continuing to ensure that we reduce all levels of multiple taxation. And we continue to make this a very investor-friendly state. I must say that Lafarge is very impressed with the close collaboration with the government, and as has been already illustrated by this forum, we're very willing to be ambassadors for Ogun State, not only in this country but also internationally. We're invested in many states in Nigeria, we operate all over the country. And we have to say that Ogun State is very progressive in terms of thinking and in terms of creating a very business-like environment. So Lafarge is very, very amenable to being an ambassador for Ogun State, not just in this country, but also outside the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So in wrapping up, what more can be done, and then we'll just move all the way down here. Thank you, Mr. Onofowoko.
I think for me, where we can go from here, or what we can add, or what they can do better. I think power has been said by all. I think power has become an issue, but power is also not an issue, because if you hear every major player, they all have their own power plants. We've just invested also in additional 10 megawatts of power on gas, and I'm sure everybody here has so many investment on gas power. Now, but for a business to actually grow within any community, you actually need to actually try and see how you can reduce capital costs. Now, capital cost in Nigeria is high because certain costs are added that's not really supposed to be part of the cost, which is infrastructural cost. Power, road, water, those are infrastructural costs. They're normally not a standard investment cost. Now, how do we encourage people to want to invest? Those three need to be watered down, or the costs need to be watered down. And that means either I cluster power, and that is all being said now, especially in government. Now, but I think the difference there is that Ogun State is the biggest industrial zone and has the potential to be the #1 in not only Nigeria, West Africa and the rest. But to do that, it also needs to break the barriers of these power infrastructure issues. Now, my own suggestion is, I'm happy to hear Lafarge has going to 300 plus. I'm happy to hear Flour Mills has. Now, the guarantee I can tell you for a fact, and they would admit to me, majority of them are not using the full power at any point in time. Now, that means they've got excess capacity. Now, what do I do with some excess capacity? I can sell the excess capacity. I can use it as a cluster around me to create more businesses that use that power. Now, we need to move away from and decentralize this power use. If I am next door to you, I don't have to invest in the same power that you have. I can share the power. Now, the problem we're having is the regulations in that area are so tough on the federal side that the state needs to break it down. Because I did know even though the state tried doing its own distribution. But it's so difficult. We're moving from monopolies of government to private sector monopoly. And then regulating private sector monopoly. It doesn't work. Now you need to deregulate, which we have. Then our state needs to make sure that this power can be shared. So if I've got 10 megawatts and I'm actually only using 5 megawatts and the next 2-3 industries need just 2 megawatts, let them be able to come to the guy with the excess power to utilize rather than invest again in additional power. So you have the environmental effect of all this. So you can break down infrastructural costs by sharing those key major investment costs with clusters. It makes it cheaper. So I can go from a 10 billion investment, that 2 billion of that is power, to 8 billion investment of 500 million additional cluster. You've broken down the cost. So it's about, investment is not only about entertaining people or bringing them in. It's also trying to bring down the cost of entry, the cost of startup. Even for the SME, they might only need 500 kV. But because you've got this customer, you can sell it to the others.
Thank you so much. And that's a brilliant one in terms of trying to see some shared services which the government can actually drive. And I think that's an interesting point. Zadikuwa and then John. Yes. We've got to keep it short because the conference, the MC is looking at me from the corner there. Yeah.
I think it's, the main areas have already been touched upon. And for us, really what I'd ask for more is a gas pipeline, because currently right now we don't have a gas pipeline, so the cost of energy is high. You have to have compressed gas, and naturally you understand that's expensive. So the assistance we would appreciate is if we can have some sort of assistance to get a gas pipeline put in the Jabu-Osisa access. That would be excellent, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Okay, John, yeah.
Well, I think that following the previous two comments, I mean, gas would be excellent, and working in clusters, I think, is a very important thing. We must focus on things. We have a lot of homegrown industries that are here. We should be asking Unilever what could be made in Ogun State that's being imported. We should be asking Flour Mills the same thing. What businesses can we build around the businesses that exist and use those clusters to develop further things, because there's a lot of economic growth and activity that can be, you have to build it around spheres, and I think we have very good infrastructure. There's a lot of focus and seeing what we can do to grow more, and perhaps some metrics for the state government, people, how many jobs have we created, what's our GDP growth through investment. A lot of metrics to really drive job creation and GDP growth.
Thank you. Mr. Baba.
As chairman of the Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists, we are more focused on the value chain creation and sustenance for the benefit of our members, because we believe that is where we find most of our members operating, both that's when we're talking to majors like this, both forward and backward. And in doing that, we have decided to go the way of capacity building and skill acquisition for our members. Why do we have to do that? We need to boost their knowledge of global trends and adapt for them to adopt global trends, not just because we want them to operate in the international market, to gain access into the international market, but for the benefit of one thing. Leventis will not see bad pork in the market in Nigeria come to Nigeria buy just because they have to buy it in Nigeria. But getting our members to adopt those global trend in production, in manufacturing, even in retail and wholesales matters a lot to us. And that is where we call on the government and even on the majors to come in to help see how we can introduce capacity development programs, skill acquisition programs for our members, especially in Ogun State. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go.
Okay. I tend to look at logistics in three chunks: the logistics of inputs, logistics of consumption, and the logistics of disposal. Now, I think the inputs and consumption group we have tended to focus on a lot as business. The logistics of disposal in Nigeria needs more work, and you see the environment and you can tell. We all grew up thinking about the concept of you throw something away. I think as adults we now realize there is no away. So you have to think very carefully and deliberately about how you protect the environment from all the commercial input that comes from manufacturing, etc. Last year, in 2015, for the very first time in our history, we had zero waste to landfill. We cut our water consumption by 7%, cut our energy consumption by 10%. I think that what we can do, not just as Unilever, but the state can help in this, is more collaborative discussion with the private sector about what are we going to do around the logistics of disposal, not just so that we can get more profitable because we're using less energy and less water and less materials, but so that we also protect the physical environment in which people have to operate and people have to live. And I think there's an opportunity. If we are collaborative, we do it in the right context, a mixture of our own responsibility as private sector, the right legislation and right incentive, we should be able to deal with this. When we started and said zero waste to landfill, it seemed impossible. There were challenges, there were things that we learned, but we learned major things. And now globally as Unilever, we've made a big commitment which says that by 2020, using 2010 as our base, we would have halved our environmental impact. So significantly decoupling growth from environmental impact. I think that is an area that Ogun State can, because you're already on that trajectory, pick and drive even further to differentiate itself. And that's the extra bit that I would add to the agenda.
Thank you very, very much. I will give the team a round of applause. We've touched on a whole bunch of stuff. I've got words that are circled here: sustainability, an enduring business model, having global values, integrating business with life itself. A lot of the companies here have got a long history, focusing on green philosophy. You talked about tourism, which is interesting. The government is friendly, is accessible. The government itself is accessible. There's a very customer relationship management focus of the state. There's peace, there's security. There seems to be sincerity of actions, there's unity of purpose. There's a strong value chain creation that's happening. A lot of emphasis on transportation. Progress is being made in the states. Yes, we need to deal with power and look at a sharing model. The same thing about providing gas to drive power. Skill acquisition is so key, capacity building. And then environmental sensitivity and discussing and working with government and so many, many more things. Ladies and gentlemen, do help me to thank all members of our panel, Mr. Sarkov, Mr. Dada, Mrs. Adebajo, John Kumantaros, Mr. Adegowa, and Mr. Onofoko. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sirs. Amar.